this is potentially what culture is now. This may be expected of me. I may be expected to behave this way. And it's like, oh, I'm a good little church boy. I can't behave this way with the prostitutes. Like, what? But imagine what I'm saying. Imagine this. What am I saying? That we are now a country of identified criminal behavior, full sociopathic, like, I was gonna say ramshackle.
Warning, this podcast is for entertainment only and not intended for medical purposes.
Enter the Freud.
Did Trump embody some kind of shadow element that then when each of us see it, even though it is terrifying by the design of what a shadow is? Like, you want to walk us through, like, what the fuck is a shadow? How does psyches have shadows? And then what happens when you see it outside in the form of Trump? And then why would you then go towards it instead of, like, the rest of us running from our own shadows?
Okay, so first off, let's do a simple definition of shadow. Shadow is it's kind of complicated. This Jungian idea is that humans are a collection of diversity of all different types of qualities. And so in my primitive biology, I have a selfish side of me.
Yeah.
But as I'm being socialized and growing up, I learn to, like, repress and hide and deny that selfish side of me.
Yeah.
And there's a million different things. And so as I'm growing
Unless
up...
you're Andrew Tate, sorry.
Right. Well, no, but that's a good example. Andrew Tate's shadow is very different from Mother Teresa's shadow.
Nice.
They're opposite.
Yeah, nice.
And so every human grows up and their mom kind of is raising them and their family is raising them and their culture is raising them, and it kind of creates their persona, which is how they're trying to present themselves.
Yeah.
And then their shadow is kind of the opposite of their persona. And people don't realize it. Like, I try to think of myself as a nice, kind, considerate person, because I learned that that's what you should be, and that mommy will love you if you're that way, and people will like you if you're that way.
Yeah.
So then in my shadow, these parts of me that I naturally am sometimes, I'm like, no, I'm never mean, and I'm never selfish, and I'm never impulsive. And so those become part of my shadow.
Are you saying,
and then when
saying the things that you deny about yourself?
Yes.
The things you deny get put into this because you're going like this with your hand, right? Like it's...
Yeah, and it's kind of like you're stuffing it into a dark box.
So then do you not know about this anymore? Where does it actually go? Like, what is this you're saying? You're saying that there's like a compartmentalized...
Yeah, I'm trying hard to be a good boy. And so I'm trying my best to never be selfish. And so the selfish impulse in me, I choke it off, stuff it away, and I try my best to never act on it.
Like, do you mean that you have to have a dialogue with yourself, or is this automatic? Are you sitting there every day saying, like, be generous, be friendly? Like, do you have to go around saying that to yourself, or how does that work?
No, it happens unconsciously.
Okay.
And I actually believe, usually the person, if they're not too mature or sophisticated, they believe they have no selfishness in them whatsoever.
Okay.
They just believe they're a genuinely altruistic person. And so then their selfish side of them is in their shadow, in their unconscious, stuffed away. And this all happens unconsciously, and they don't know they're doing it.
Can it stay there forever? Or does it find its way?
No, it will wreak havoc on them one way or another.
Really?
And some people even believe that it'll, if they're so good at repressing it, that it will wreak havoc on them through, like, physical symptoms or sickness, or, and this is getting back to the Donald Trump thing, or through kind of wild, nutty behavior, because they start to project their shadow on other people, and then behave really irrationally and with excessive nuttiness when they see someone else who's acting selfishly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, that person is a fascist. That person is Hitler. The world's going to end.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that because I don't know what percentage of our population has been looking at Trump and just like it is bringing up so much of all of our cultural conditioning, right? Like we as let's say Americans, right? Like culturally, we all kind of agree on a certain type of behavior. I don't know where it comes from, collectively from our European heritage, right? And so we all kind of have this idea of how we're supposed to behave. It's kind of Judeo-Christian in its way, right? I get that it continuously modifies every generation, but there is kind of an agreed upon way that we behave, and clearly this dude is not, meaning Trump, is not behaving in that way. Like, what do you think he was doing that made people so alarmed? Like, which codes did he break, actually?
I mean, he'll happily break any code. He just does what the fuck he wants, says what he wants, is just wildly sort of like egocentric, grandiose.
Yeah.
And people, I think it's understandable. People think, well, that dude is like off his rocker. He's not a safe person to have as the president. Like, we don't want him to be in control of our nuclear weapons because he's so fucking impulsively grandiose.
Well, he also, he has this history of creating all these rip-off scams with Trump University and he's done so many silly business moves in the past. And then, he's caught all the time with prostitutes and various other scenarios that once you become rich and powerful, and you're supposed to somehow be beyond that, right? That's one of our like bizarre false truisms, right? When we think that, oh, if you're smart and you're rich, then you're suddenly beyond this primitive self. But then here's a man who's just very primitive by his design. I think that would be one way to describe his behavior is primitive. Do you think that's fair?
I think it's fair. The main feature I see when I'm actually listening to him is he seems, and this fits like the narcissistic personality disorder thing, is he seems just like unbelievably ravenous for people to think, wow, Trump, you're so great. It's just like he can never get, everything he says is he's like, my campaign is doing great in this and he's just like constantly pulling for someone to praise him. And then if the interview does praise him, he really likes the interview, and it's this really nice, warm thing.
Yeah.
But if the interviewer or whoever is more skeptical and critical of him, then he quickly shifts into this just like fucking warrior, asshole, combatant dude.
Did you hear Jordan talk about this one feature of Trump? I thought it was really quite brilliant insight that he's like a truly narcissistic personality disorder, like one who would be a dictator, would never surround himself with people so much smarter than him, with RFK and Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard. Like, all these people are smarter than he is. And I that may not be true. Like, Trump may actually be a totally bizarre, like, whack job genius, right? He might be. I think, I'm not that, actually, personally, I'm not convinced of that at all, right? I get that he's got this really fascinating social intelligence phenomenon, right? Where he's basically the best comedian who has ever gotten into the like you remember him at the no, you left before he talked. It didn't matter. He didn't say anything except he just clowned the crowd a lot at the Bitcoin conference, right? Just like a comedian. He's like, I think that part of him is at least cultivated, right? And
of like knowing how to play the game of the interpersonal dynamics.
Yes. He certainly does. No, and then when you hear all these other people who have actually spent time with him, they're like interpersonally impressed by him. And it's like, what? Like that guy doesn't look like he's gonna woo you and have you totally be like, oh wow, this guy's awesome. Like,
I agree. I think I have no idea, but my guess is, have you had this experience? You go out on a date with some woman or you meet some woman and the chemistry is just like intense and you just get into this like in love, rose-colored glasses merger thing. And then hours or days or weeks go on. And then you realize, oh, she's like a borderline nut job. And then you're kind of like, oh, wow. There's something about her borderline nut jobby thing that allowed her to be super seductive and mergy at the beginning. I sort of like feel something like that. It seems like he's weirdly charismatic, but in a personality disorder way.
It's definitely some cluster B personality stuff. But see, I think Jordan's fucking observation is that it isn't narcissist. Like, he is not a fucking narcissist. He is something else. Even weirder, and he might even be some kind of a thing that just isn't quite clearly defined, right? He might be a novel type of narcissist, like one that isn't fragile. This must be some kind of very strange type that then would, because of course the classic narcissist also is a name dropper, right? Who would want to have famous, powerful people around him, right? But like Jordan always does, he kind of fucks with the terminology and he fucks with things, basically like just warping them. The way that he does with a lot of the Christianity stuff, he's just warping it.
But let me disagree with Jordan here. Show me a video clip of for some reason Tulsi comes to mind most because she's a really independent thinker and she's not scared to disagree with me.
No,
show me a video.
She's also hot. You're into her.
Yep. Show me a video of Trump and Tulsi discussing something. Tulsi totally like contradicts what Trump says, and Trump takes it okay. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. I bet you it's all rosy thus far because Tulsi and RFK and Elon and JD Vance are all kind of know they have to play that stupid game around Trump's ego.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to tolerate having those people contradict him. Or tell him he's wrong, or tell him he's missed an important point and he needs to change his thinking. I don't think he's going to tolerate that shit.
Okay, so since we've now gotten into his personality, now this is a perfect place to then reflect back. What the fuck are people seeing in, like, what is this dragging up within people's unconscious psychic construction that when they see, oh, look at this guy, is this somewhat reflecting that America then is also fragile, totally defensive, and narcissistic, self-centered? Why is it that we're all reacting in this way?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. First, before that's the interesting question. But before we get into that, first I think we need to describe the reasonable part of the response. So if a person is like, oh my God, this is fucking terrifying. How the fuck did America elect a maniac to president? Some portion of that is a very reasonable, understandable reaction. So let me just quickly say that.
Yeah.
Is that Trump does seem like seriously mentally ill, does whatever the fuck he wants, super impulsive, driven mostly by ego shit. And so, this seems reasonable to me. He's now promised the American people that he's going to quickly end the Ukraine war. And we know Putin has heard him say that. So imagine you're Putin and you're sitting there being like, Trump thinks he's going to quickly end the Ukraine war. All right, I got him right where I want him. So Trump calls up Vlad. What's up, Vlad? Hey, dude, we got to end this Ukraine war. And Vlad's like, all right, dude, what are you going to offer me?
Yeah.
And Trump's like, oh, I'll give you X, Y, Z. Vlad's like, no, that's not enough. I need more. Trump's fucked, you know?
yeah, totally.
And so imagine that phone call, and Vlad's like, no, I need more, I need this. And Trump's like, fuck you. And it's like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. And then Trump's like, all right, nukes. I don't think that would really happen. But you can see how people would be worried about Trump and Vlad trying to like compromise on something.
I know. That's where I think Trump's borderline narcissistic thing might literally be so powerful, like a Sith Lord. He might actually be able to suck this dude in and then get him
I think that's true.
to agree to
I agree.
some totally bullshit deal.
I think that's a good point, but maybe he's not. When the two Sith Lords come together, if one of the possibilities is nuclear war, that's scary.
Yeah, fine. Okay.
Okay, so I think it's reasonable that people are a little bit unsettled and scared by having Trump present. Now, back to your question. What's the unreasonable thing? Because people are losing their shit to an irrational degree.
Yes.
I just walked in this morning to the office, and a therapist came out, and she said she just got done with a client, and the client thinks they're going to die in the next few days because Trump became president.
Oh, fucking... Dude, this is amazing.
Yeah, and that just happened by accident, and that's so if it just happened, it's commonplace.
Yes.
So kind of what we're talking about, if we want to put a name to it, is Trump derangement syndrome. What is Trump derangement syndrome? Like, why does Trump make people go into irrational panic, death, the end of the world, freak out?
So I would say it's because of this massively repressed part of all of our understanding of what a human being is. I think our view of what a human is over the past 10 years has gotten really skewed and wimpy, and it lacks all this kind of a depth of spectrum where it's like, oh, we're all supposed to somewhat be within our camps, and our camps are getting smaller and smaller, who we're allowed to be. And so it doesn't actually include, like in the East, where you have gods that are destructive, and then you have gods that are adoring and empowering, and like there's a full spectrum there within the projected onto gods, right? But in our culture, we're fucking losing it, and like and both sides need to present as pious or genuflecting and or whatever the fuck we were calling it in COVID, like that. When you
virtue signaling,
right? Like that's just a symptom of something much bigger. That like the perception of what a human is getting so like actually distorted and limited. It's denying our primitive design. And so this is my very serious explanation for what has happened, is that there we see a person embodying the primitive and then being elected, in some cases adored, and it's just like, oh God, there's something terribly wrong. There's
I totally agree. I think you're 100% right. Let me just kind of say the same thing you did in other words, because I think it's important. In psychoanalytic terms, the idea is that the human, and this is similar to the shadow Jungian thing, that humans, in psychoanalysis, humans have an id, which is like this powerful, primitive, animalistic, volcanic drive to fuck and to kill and to dominate. That we all have that.
Yes.
And the kind of nice, liberal, virtue signaling world is in denial that exists in us.
Let me just say it again. We all have that.
Yeah.
Like, all human beings possess this drive. But
well, I believe that. You believe that. Freud believed it. Jung believed it. But the left-wing 2024 world, they don't really believe that. And
it's not only the left. I think the right also has as it's reached some kind of a place of legitimacy, I think they too are now like falling into this. Like
yeah, okay, but Donald Trump flaunts his. He's like, Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm the fucking man, I'm in charge, I'll dominate with my cock and my ego and my fucking power. And so he goes and he just wields his id and flexes it and asserts it. And so anyone who's in denial of that is absolutely fucking horrified, and they do this shadow projection thing because they think they don't have it, and then they see someone else doing it, and it just blows their mind and seems terrifyingly threatening.
It becomes threatening. So then what does the psyche do? This is what I mean, is like, this is where I think you and I have a true insight. Like, what does the psyche do when it has repressed this aspect of what the self actually is? Meaning, like, you are in denial of the fact of your own drive towards power, your own greed and self-centeredness, right? Like, you have figured out how to appropriately identify above that, and then you suddenly see, oh shit, this is potentially what culture is now. This may be expected of me. I may be expected to behave this way. And it's like, oh, I'm a good little church boy. I can't behave this way with the prostitutes. Like, what? But imagine what I'm saying. Imagine this. What am I saying? That we are now a country of identified criminal behavior, full sociopathic, like, I was gonna say ramshackle. Like, what the fuck is? I'm serious. This has to be what's causing the panic, the moral panic. Right? And so then what does this self do? Like in the case of this client who just literally was like, I think I'm going to die because this is happening. Like, what is that? What?
I think, well, the idea of the shadow is that it's created early on when you're really young, and it's kind of like, oh shit, I need to not be selfish or else I won't be lovable.
Yes.
And so it exists at this very young kind of primitive level of like survival and safety.
Yeah.
And so then if someone else out there is violating these rules, it hits like a level of danger that's fucking primitive and intense. And so Trump is out there flaunting his id and his power drive and his sex drive and his ego drive. And everyone who's been repressing that their whole lives is like, thinks the world is going to end.
Dude, he literally is fat, eats McDonald's, and just is like cusses and says dumb shit. Like, oh God, it is terrifying to all those who have aspired to a level of proper, like, it is literally the end of American bourgeoisie. He is the end. It's like, I don't know how, I don't even feel bad about that. I'm kind of like, well, you know, I don't really feel like I fit within said bourgeoisie, so even though everyone else would say, I bet you're like hyper educated and then you're white in that position, you are part of it. And I'm like, I really don't feel like I am.
Well, but when you said bourgeoisie, you were implying kind of like this we're very civilized, respectable people in America, and we would never flaunt our cocks or our power.
Yes, and also we are the knowers, we are the experts. We will lead you and give you the information of how to behave and live. But what I've started to notice in my own clinical practice is people are starting to realize, shit, there is no authority. There is no authority coming to tell us how to live and behave. Like, which is kind of strange, because then I'll ask them, like, well, so do you think Trump should tell you how to live? No, I don't think so. What about Kamala? Do you think Kamala has a good idea of how to behave? Oh, no, that. And I'm like, okay, so then how do you know? Do the laws tell you how to live and how to dress and what to eat? Like, no. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what I think is like some form of a crisis of meaning. Right? Like, some people experience the rise of Trump as a crisis of meaning. Because they're like, it's not okay to be fat and to eat McDonald's and you're like, wait a second, who's telling this man? How is he? And then you start to realize, as if you pay attention, you start to realize, oh my God, there's no one telling anyone. And then, boom, we are actually hitting an existential crisis in the same way that, well, no, it's not in any way the same mechanisms as the French did, but we are being forced into an existential awareness. Do you think that's wrong? Am I?
No.
That's my own projection?
No, I think that's totally true, dude. Because we've lost our religious cultural thing, and so then people are like, okay, so what's the meaning of life? I don't know. Well, I'll be a really good person, and I'll, do my persona thing that mommy taught me to do. And then Trump comes and just completely violates that, and it upends their whole life understanding.
Yeah, if you're like a good person and you bought a Tesla so that there's no emissions, and then now Trump comes along and you're gonna just drive giant fucking diesel truck with black smoke coming out, it's almost like the renaissance of the hillbilly, the renaissance of like, what is America? What is America? I think we've been in very serious denial of the truth of what it really is. I think we've kind of played fast and loose and made a little pretend projection. Oh, America is Elon. America is, Apple products. That's what America is. And it's like, oh, what about all of the factory workers and the whatever the dudes are in the crowds at the Trump rallies? So you're like, that shit isn't iPhone. What is that?
Well, and so part of the left, it seems like they want to think we're good people. We're altruistic, moral, good people. They really want to believe that.
Yeah.
And Trump is more like, I don't know. I'll just do what the fuck I want to do what I want. And so there is this kind of existential question of, is like, am I a genuinely good person? Or am I just an animal trying to survive and look out for number one and fuck and get power and get money? Like, which is it? And that's a painful question to wrestle with.
Yeah, Ayn Rand went into that in the concept of self-preservation. I think she did a great job pointing out that actually to have yourself as the center could potentially be you living to your highest purpose. And that's a crazy thing to say to this world, right? Because that would mean Trump is living to his highest purpose, the way he's behaving, right? And it's like, wow. I get that Ayn Rand is a feminist, but she would say that about this man. Like, because what is he doing? It's like, is he self-centered, or is this self-preservation, right? Like,
right. Or both.
Or both. In the case of you and I, as we have to then wrestle with this today and tomorrow, like, are we going to just be self-centered, or are we acting towards self-preservation? Is a strange term for the idea that you focusing on yourself is to be you living in your highest good. Right? And it's like, who would dare say that about Trump? Like, I don't know. I don't know anyone, except I just did on accident.
Well, I think Trump supporters would, but certainly all the people who hate Trump would think that's idiotic.
Yeah.
It kind of raises, I'm kind of taking this off onto a different thing, but it's interesting. It raises this interesting political economic question. Capitalism, I think, is based on this self-preservation idea that if everyone is out there working for their own best, that actually leads to economic riches for everyone. Versus the more socialist communist is more like, no, people shouldn't be out there trying to work for their own best interest. We should all just like work together cooperative. I never heard this Ayn Rand thing that you just said. So my understanding of what you're saying about Ayn Rand is that self-preservation is when the individual is really anchored in doing their best at what they most need for themselves, which allows them to kind of like fully flourish as a human, and that she's saying that's what a person should do.
Yeah.
I then was like, oh, that's kind of like this interesting, almost like religious faith idea that capitalism is based on. And that if everyone is doing that in capitalism, then the markets flourish, economies flourish, countries flourish, and it's really the best for everyone.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm totally with you. Did you look at the markets today? Like, what happened after the election?
Everything's totally gone way up.
Oh, wow.
Everything, stocks, crypto, everything.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I was hoping, I wanted to check before this, but I forgot.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of money in crypto, man. I made a insane.
No way, dude. Oh, wow. Well, I guess that happened, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and I wouldn't tell that to people on the left wing because I'd be worried they'd think I was a bad person for that.
Right. Even though what you just pointed out is that if all of us behaved in this way, then it would literally inspire the entirety to prosper. The entirety of...
Yes, that's the theory of capitalism, but the left wing would say that's not true.
Yes, because of you, and what you did is somehow you had more, you put it into crypto, and because the market's now you a rich boy. And then and some people, they didn't have any, and so their position within the world of wealth and finance is not going to change as a result of this, right? So, in fact, there's a huge portion of America that nothing is going to be different. They weren't positioned in a way, and it's like,
right.
Well, we supposed to be upset about that, or are like, were you always positioned this way? Did Daddy put this crypto for you in the bank?
Over the years, I've spent a lot of fucking time studying macroeconomics and investment, and I've gotten pretty smart and clever about knowing where to put money and whatever, and then it pays off.
Well,
and I think the left, a certain portion of the left wing is really uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, I get exactly what the deal is with being uncomfortable with that, because people don't have it all, right? Like, as some of my boys said, yeah, porn, some of us don't have it like you have it, right? And I'm just like, oh, wow, that was an interesting observation, right? Like, okay, maybe that's true, right? Like, maybe I succeeded more than them, but I'm also older than my friends, mostly.
Yeah.
Right? I'm kind of further in the maturity of my life.
And the truth, a true wisdom in the left wing is we should try to help each other out. And the people who are in a better position should try to lift up the people who are not in as good a position. That's obviously true.
Yes.
But the problem is the left has taken it too far, and I think it gets back to this shadow idea, and they just start to think that rich people are bad and greedy, and it's kind of like this greedy shadow thing, and they think that poor people and victims are inherently good, when in fact, lots of times poor people are poor because they're fucking lazy dumbasses.
Sure. Of course we all know that's true, but that fits within the shadow. Stuff that away, never speak of it again. And it's ridiculous because everyone who's in charge of the left is fucking rich as hell. Like, it's preposterous. Biden, his kids, all of them, they're just like making millions and millions of dollars. It's like,
it is really preposterous. All the leaders of this thing are insanely rich. It's so preposterous.
Yeah, it is. And so I guess this also, I suppose, almost amplifies our observation that the freak out we are observing comes from a highly repressed view, not only from the idea of what our country could be, it's who we are individually, right? It's like who we see ourselves is going to expand. All our inner hillbillies are going to get a platform now. Like all of our inner like American dejected self is now going to have a place to exist. Now, and you might say, what the fuck are you saying? Like, that's the stupidest thing you could say. No, we're watching it happen real time. And I say that the dejected self, as within each one of us exists a part that is inappropriate. You can't say it. This was really, really clear within COVID as cancel culture hit its peak and then died. And then there was like this whole a massive trend towards censoring speech. Censor your thoughts. You can't have those thoughts? Well, I'm afraid what's happening right now is there is now a platform for some of the most inappropriate thoughts. Some of the strangest things I think we are now going to observe. The theater of this is going to be, dude, I don't know. That's weird. I just saw myself in a totally weird, I was just railing into this it wasn't this exploratory sense of hey, listen to this thoughts, maybe this is the voice of reason. No, I was hardened and weird, slightly Jordan-esque actually. I bet you when you watch this video back fucking 40 seconds ago, I was in a state of mind that was weird.
You were starting to get to more like a Sith Lord.
Yeah, dude. That guy, dude. I haven't seen him in a while. He's not playful. It wasn't funny. There was nothing and I don't think when I first met Kirk, he said to me, he goes, I listened to you very carefully, and he's like, I just want to ask you to do one thing. Can you finish an entire hour without compulsively being funny? That was his challenge to me. That was his invite into me exploring a different intellectual side of myself. Right? Because I had this...
And were you able to do it?
Oh, totally. But that was in the first time in my life. Prior to that, I had never completed an hour without just finding, just waiting for a moment and then drop in a fucking totally inappropriate thing about titties. Or whatever.
I mean, I think Kirk is right, but on the other hand, being playful, there's a lot of people who can't be playful, and that's a way worse fucking problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to be able to do both, but so I think what I was just embodying was almost like my inner Kirk. Because he's pretty fucking serious in there, dude.